Hi, my name is Leah Day, and welcome to this video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. We are on our last block. This is block number 12, our slash star. So let's get started piecing. So I've got my little cutting mat set up here, and I have placed my B squares on the bottom. That's my fabric B, the black, and then fabric A squares on top. And I've aligned everything together so it's all stacked up. And then I've placed this cutting template on top. And with the cutting template, this is going to be on 4 separate pages. You want to cut every single one out on the dotted line and tape them together according to the diagram. To find this cutting template, go to leahday.com. You can find the Building Blocks quilt pattern. We've got both a download and a physical copy, and that's where you can find this template to make this block. Okay, so I've laid my template on top, and now what we're going to do is we're going to use a rotary cutter and ruler and cut along all of these straight lines. So here we go. I'm going to place my ruler on the block, and you just want to line it up on the line and make your cut. Okay, here's where things kind of get hairy. You don't want the template to shift too much because we got several lines to cut through. So just kind of realign it, get it back over where it needs to be, and then make your next cut. This is one of those blocks. The inspiration actually was Josh. I think he was just making dinner one night, and I was designing this quilt, kind of sitting at the table, and I said, I cannot design the last block. Everything I design is too complicated. I want it to be really simple this month. And he was like, well, hand me a piece of paper. And he just drew, just the star shape. And I looked at it, I was like, you can't piece that. That's impossible. And I was kind of critical, and he was like, well, don't ask for help if you don't want advice. So I sat down and I started fiddling with the idea, and as I thought about it, I realized, this actually could work. We just slice up the fabrics and then piece them back together again, and it actually could work. So you can see I'm just cutting on the lines and very carefully making sure the template doesn't shift too far away from itself. As you cut it up, of course, it gets more challenging. But every single cut, just simply place your ruler along the line and cut down with your rotary cutter. Now it is 4 layers of fabric. That's why I'm having to sometimes redo a cut, simply because it's kind of hard to cut through all those layers at once. So you want a nice sharp blade for this. And my blade's going a little dull on me, so just keep that in mind. All right, here's our last one. And I am kind of shifting my body. You can't really see me moving, but I am shifting my body around this so I'm not cutting at awkward angles to myself. So that's all of the lines cut. I'm just going to remove the paper. We don't need this template. It's just a cutting template, and we're all done with it now. Okay, so at this point, we have 4 layers of fabric and we sliced through everything. We can make 4 blocks with just this. So here I'm going to step out 1 block so you can see. Basically, you just grab an A fabric here. The next piece you'll grab a B fabric, and you'll just alternate A and B to create the really pretty star. So here, in this situation, the kind of arms of the star are going to be in black fabric, the B fabric, and the background is going to be the A. And then, of course, we're going to have reverse blocks too that are going to be the exact opposite colorway. So that's another cool thing about this block, is that you're going to kind of get 2 different colorways for every block that you piece. So you're going to have 2 that are black and blue, and 2 that are blue and black. So there's a lot of pieces to this block, of course, but it's really going to come together very, very easily. And the reason it's going to come together so easily is because there's no precision involved with this. We're going to end up with very wonky blocks. I'm going to set all of these pieces aside. Remember, you can piece all 4 of your blocks from this, just simply arranging the pieces in this way or in this opposite way. You're going to end up with 2 in this way and 2 in this colorway. So here's kind of where we're going with this, and I want you to understand the wonky nature of this block. This is not going to match. This probably will not match. It was lucky that this matched. It's okay. This is the point. This is why we're doing this. This is the way the block is supposed to finish up. So let's get going piecing the pieces together. Okay, so in your building blocks quilt pattern, you will find this diagram, and all of the pieces are numbered. So basically you just want to start with piece number 1 and number 2, place them right sides together, take it to the sewing machine, and stitch this. Now, doesn't matter what kind of seam allowance you use. You want to use roughly 1/4 inch seam allowance, but if you use a smaller seam allowance for this, that's okay too. This is not in any way perfect, and it doesn't have to be exact. So if you want to use a smaller seam allowance and save some fabric, you can. Another thing to keep in mind is that these pieces are not going to really align along the ends. You can kind of get it close, but really don't obsess about it. Like, I think I'm going to go with it looking like that. That looks good to me. And there's really no need for accuracy here. Don't obsess about it. You don't want to have a seam allowance that's really huge. I wouldn't go beyond 1/4 inch, but if you want to stitch with less, that's perfectly fine. And it doesn't even matter if you're consistent with it, because the block is going to come out wonky no matter what. Okay, so there's that seam stitched. Press that seam allowance open just to reduce the bulk. Now let's grab our next piece. Okay, with these two pieces together, take a look at your chart. You'll find that we are going to put together pieces 3, 4, and 5. So simply, of course, layer right sides together, stitch that seam, layer this piece right sides together, stitch that seam, press the seams open, and I'll meet you back here when we're ready to attach these sides. Okay, 3, 4, and 5 is together, and our 1 and 2 are together, so simply layer this on top of this. If you want to get matchy-matchy and try and get that to line up, you can, but I'm not going to. I'm simply going to place this on top of this, grab a hold of it, and take it to the sewing machine, and however that seam ends up is perfectly fine. Just to clarify what I mean about less than 1/4 inch seam allowance, let me show you. You can actually save a little fabric by stitching, I don't know, maybe a little bit more than 1/8 inch seam allowance. It's enough fabric that it gets caught and held securely, but you know, it's a little less waste, and that's perfectly fine. The nice thing about this block is that there are no rules, and that you can make it up as you go along, and you don't even need to be consistent. If you want to stitch some of the seam allowances at 1/4 inch and some of them at 1/8, that's perfectly fine. The key here is just simply to stitch it and have some fun making something wonky. See how far off that is? Yay! That looks great. I love it. Okay, so here's what the block should be looking like about right now. The center section has been pieced, and now all we have to do is connect these side pieces together and then piece them to the center. So what I'm going to do is simply place, this is piece number 7 on top of piece number 6, stitch that seam, place piece number 8 on top of piece number 6, like this, and stitch this seam, and do the same thing over here. Placing 10 on top of 9, stitch that seam, place 11 on top of 9, and stitch that seam. So I'm going to go take this to the sewing machine and stitch these seams, and then I'll meet you back here when we're connecting these two sides to the center. So here's our block and what it should look like right now, and you can see we've got the center section and the two side sections. If you really want to, you can take this to your mat and cut and trim down the edges so that way they're clean. Like right now I've got kind of different levels coming along this straight line. I've got this is kind of punching out a little bit, this is kind of dipping in. If you want to trim these up just a little bit along these sides, you certainly can. As far as matching it up the way it is, pretty much what I do is just kind of generally line up, you know, the ends, and then make sure that I'm going to have at least something straight to line my presser foot up with, and then just stitch the seam. And I'm not going to worry too much when things, you know, I have a little bit more seam allowance or a little less seam allowance. It's going to be fine. It's going to come out in the wash. Okay, with those seams stitched, you can see how wonky this is. Nothing's matching. It's okay, no big deal. You might want to take a little bit of time to finger press this open carefully. There are a lot of very wonky angles here, and when you finger press, you want to just be gentle, because of course we can still distort this. These aren't even bias. It's not even cut really on a true bias or a technical bias. They're just really wonky, so just be careful and gentle with the fabrics as you finger press, and then press the seams open from the back side. There we go. Of course, we're going to be quilting inside of this block 8 inches, so keep in mind we're not going to ever have sharp points with this block. It's going to look, something like this after quilting, and that's perfectly fine. I think it's still going to look really cute. It still looks like a star. And I love how funky and freeform this is, and I hope that you will join me and make 4 of these blocks. So that's it for the slash star block. I really hope that you've enjoyed breaking all the rules with me today. We didn't even use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You don't have to if you don't want to. The blocks are wonky. Nothing is supposed to match. We don't even have corners, and it's a star. We don't even have points, and it's still a star that's going to be a beautiful addition to our quilts. So I hope that you'll enjoy making 4 of these this month. We are going to be quilting a little differently this month. Your templates are there, and they're definitely inspiration for how you can quilt these blocks, but they might not necessarily fit with your finished blocks. So we might have to get a little creative in our marking techniques, or you might want to try freehand quilting, simply thinking of the design in your mind and stitching without any marked lines. So it's going to be a lot of fun, both in the piecing and in the quilting. So I hope that you'll join me for this. My name is Leah Day, and this has been a video for the Building Blocks Quilt Along. Pick up your copy of the Building Blocks Quilt Pattern at leahday.com and join me as we learn how to piece and free motion quilt this year. Until next time, let's go quilt.